For Edwardian Britons, a Bradshaw's was an indispensable guide to a railway network at its peak. I'm using an early 20th century edition to navigate a vibrant and optimistic Britain at the height of its power and influence in the world. But a nation wrestling with political, social and industrial unrest at home. Around the time of my 1913 guidebook, the United Kingdom of Britain and Ireland was reeling from industrial strife and suffragette outrages. But the biggest crisis was the conflict in Ireland between those who wanted home rule and those, mainly in Ulster with its Protestant majority, who were willing to take up arms against the British government rather than be ruled by a parliament in Dublin that would be Catholic dominated. As Home Rule made its slow progress towards implementation, civil war seemed inevitable. I'm embarking on a journey through Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Starting in Newry, I'll travel to Belfast. From the Causeway coast, the ferry will bear me to Scotland. I'll tour the lowlands via Dumfries before heading to Glasgow, second city of the Edwardian Empire. The West Highland Line will take me through Arrocha and Tarbert to end my journey in Argyll and Bute. Today I begin in the northern Irish town of Newry, where I'll find out about the campaign for Irish self-government. Then it's north to Scarva and Portadown. On this trip, I uncover a surprising Edwardian industry. This was used to build aeroplanes.
So something like that, to build aeroplanes.
Reveal the childhood attire of one of our greatest leaders. Just is too delicious an image to imagine Winston Churchill wearing that. And find myself in a sticky situation. I think the only issue I'm going to have is ever getting it off my hand. It may have to be baked on the limb, I think. At the time of my guidebook, all of Ireland was part of the United Kingdom and had been since the Act of Union of 1801, which abolished the Irish Parliament. There were rebellions, and a campaign for Irish self-government, known as Home Rule, came to a head following the general election of 1910. At Westminster, a political deal had been done. The Irish nationalists would keep the Liberal government, which didn't have a majority on its own, in office in return for Home Rule. But the elongated parliamentary timetable would allow Ulster Unionists to arm and to drill, and nationalists to continue to demand that the promise of devolution nonetheless be delivered. At my first stop, Newry, an Ulster town where Catholics predominated, there was to be a Home Rule rally on the 10th of December, 1911. And a special train from Armagh would swell the numbers. I've come to meet local historian Hugh McShane to find out about Newry's role in this very grave political crisis. Hugh, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too, Megan.
Hugh, following the general elections of 1910, the Irish nationalists in the Westminster Parliament have done a deal with the Liberals to keep them in office. Why do they need to have a Home Rule rally in Newry?
The reason for that really was that the Parliament Act of 1911, passed in August, had ensured that if a Home Rule bill were passed, it would not be killed off by the House of Lords. So I think the rally really was designed to galvanise nationalism and to ensure that the Home Rule bill would actually become the Home Rule Act.
Who are the speakers at the rally?
Well, there was a wide spectrum of speakers. You had a cabinet minister, the Under-Secretary for War, Colonel Seeley. You had MPs from South Down and South Armagh. We had Joe Devlin, the leading nationalist politician in Ulster. And you had various speakers from the Protestant community, interestingly.
What, in favour of Home Rule?
In favour of Home Rule. It's not well known that there were Protestant Home Rulers. And many of those people came to the rally in order to assert their view that Home Rule would be good for Ireland.
What kind of numbers attended?
The local newspaper, the Newry Reporter, they talked in terms of thousands. So it's likely that there would have been something like 5,000 at it.
Demonstrators came from across the region, many arriving on a chartered train from nearby Armagh. Nationalists were organising protests across Ireland to demonstrate support for Home Rule, and the rally in Newry was intended to open the campaign in Ulster. But Unionists remained opposed to any move to divide them from the United Kingdom. I get the impression that at the time, Newry was a Catholic majority, nationalist town. What were relations like between the two communities?
Relations were very good. The people of Newry worked together in the linen mills and in the docks. They socialised together. They didn't live together. But essentially, relations were very good.
What is the impact of the emerging Home Rule crisis on those relations?
It had a negative impact, at least on a temporary basis.
Nationalists and Unionists took up arms, but the implementation of Home Rule was suspended for the duration of the First World War. At the conclusion of those hostilities, an Anglo-Irish War followed, with independence as its goal. It ended in 1921 with the partition of Ireland into a largely Protestant north and a predominantly Catholic south. How do you find Newry today?
Newry, in the past, of course, because of the recent troubles, has suffered terribly. Both communities have suffered terribly, and that has left its mark. But I believe in recent times that there has been tremendous work done rebuilding community relations. And I certainly believe that the future of Newry is bright and that the community together will help to develop the prospects of the town.
For centuries a frontier town, Newry straddles the counties of Down and Armagh and sits on the main route between Belfast and Dublin. Most people living in democracies can ignore politics if they choose. Not here in Newry, just a few miles from the border with the Republic. Fighters with bombs and guns disputed whether it should be in the United Kingdom or a united Ireland. Now we ask whether its politicians can govern Ulster together. That border will soon demarcate the European Union from the United Kingdom. You can't ignore politics here. There's still a vibrant Gaelic culture on display in the town today. Hello, girls. Congratulations on that performance. That was absolutely lovely. How long have you been learning? Since when?
Since I was 3.
Since you were 3?
Yeah.
And you?
Since I was 5.
Do you do it just for exercise and fun, or do you compete?
We have Irish Nationals coming up and we compete at like All Ireland's and Ulsters. Against people from like all around the world as well.
How well have you done so far?
We recalled, but we're hoping to qualify.
Well, I have a feeling if you keep practicing, you certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm heading further north into County Down. I'm on my way to Scarva to discuss this wonderful fabric. My grandfather was a manufacturer of linen in Scotland, and so the textile looms in my background, as well as being woven into the history of Northern Ireland. The village of Scarva sits on the banks of the Newry Canal. The area was once an important industrial centre for linen manufacture. 5 miles east of Scarva is the town of Banbridge, home to one of the last remaining linen mills in Northern Ireland. Thomas Ferguson, Irish Linen, was established in 1854. Hello, Judith. I'm Michael.
Welcome to Ferguson's.
Thank you so
Go
much.
on ahead.
Judith Neely is showing me around the mill. Judith, I find linen gorgeous stuff. What is it?
Linen, well, it's actually basically a grass. It grows, we harvest it, we take the outside off and take the linen from the very inside of the grass and weave it.
And what are the properties of linen that make it so useful?
What make it truly fabulous is it's antibacterial, which is a shock to most people. But where it's really good is it's naturally wicking. So if you've had one of those nylon sports shirts that takes the sweat away from your body and keeps you cool, linen does that naturally.
In Edwardian times, how many people would have been working in the industry in Northern Ireland, do you imagine?
It would have been huge. Within one factory alone in Belfast, there were over 5,000 people working.
The linen industry was at its peak in the early 20th century. It had been manufactured in Ireland for centuries, but in the late 1800s, Ulster became a centre for the world's production. When does Northern Ireland kind of make its breakthrough?
The breakthrough really is with the American Civil War and the embargoes on cotton. That's when it really expanded and everybody moved in from the countryside to the factories. And then there was a great deal of work went on within Belfast where they cut the shipping lane in so that they could spread it around the world. This is one of our oldest fabrics. We call it 8x8, which is 8 threads over 8. But in the days of the aeroplane pioneers, if they were looking for linen to cover their wooden frame with, this is probably the linen that they would have run in to get.
This was used to build aeroplanes?
So something like that, to build aeroplanes.
There's material here I must look into.
Absolutely.
Northern Ireland is well known for its aviation history. Shaw Brothers was the world's first aircraft manufacturing company and was based in Belfast from 1948. I've come to the hangars of the Ulster Aviation Society to find out more about the material origins of one of the country's biggest businesses. What an extraordinary surprise. This used to be the Longkesh Aerodrome, and in this hangar they've got a superb collection of vintage aircraft. Well, vintage, some of them I remember. I used to travel to Northern Ireland as Secretary of State for Defence. This is the Westland Puma. This one here is the Wessex. And in those days, of course, we were enduring possible anti-aircraft fire by the Provisional IRA. It's somewhat easier to come to Northern Ireland today and arrive, as I do now, by train. Owen?
Michael, how are you?
It's very good to see you. Pilot and instructor Owen Anderson has been involved in the meticulous recreation of a pioneering Edwardian flying machine. I've come to find out about linen-covered planes. Looks like I've discovered one. What is this?
This is a replica, so the Ferguson flyer of one that was built in 1909.
Well, there's a long history of constructing aircraft in Northern Ireland, so it begins here, does
It
it?
certainly does, yes. It goes back to the very beginning of the century. The aircraft manufacturers seen that linen for covering the aircraft and providing a skin on the aircraft, that was invaluable for that. And obviously the aircraft that was used in the First World War, the SUP with camels and aircraft like that there, that fought on the front line were all covered with Irish linen.
And the demand then for aircraft and for linen in the First World War must have been astronomical.
Yes, there was lots of factories around Northern Ireland that were flat out making Irish linen.
The British government ordered around 50,000 miles of aircraft cloth during the war years. By the end of the conflict, it was said, the war was won on Ulster wings.
I stitched it, stitched every rib and got everything ready for flying.
You stitched this?
Basically, it took me about 45 hours to cover the entire aircraft. That's about 18 stitches per rib, so 15 hours of work just to stitch the wings.
Today, Owen is the only person in Northern Ireland who retains this skill.
Okay, so we have a structure here. This is a rudder, so all the wooden bits here, just give them a light coat of nitrocellulose dope. This acts as a glue as well.
So this feels awfully like a sort of construction kit at home, doesn't
Yep,
it?
exactly. It's the same sort of stuff you would have used years ago in building model aircraft, tissue and dope.
And then we're going to apply the linen, is that right?
Apply the linen, that's right. It's actually the same linen as I used in the Ferguson, some I had left over.
The linen is stretched over the wooden frame. The dope is applied to tighten and seal the material. Now, why is it so important to make this as taut as we possibly can?
Basically, we have to make a wing airtight, so that when it's flying through the air, there's no air escaping up through it. The cellulose dope will seal the weft and the weave. It'll close all the holes up, all the wee bits and pieces, and make the wing more aerodynamic.
I've taken flight, back to my favourite mode of transport. I'm crossing into County Armagh, heading to the town of Portadown, which I'll explore tomorrow. Portadown's history dates back to the plantation of Ulster in the early 17th century, when English and Scottish Protestants settled on land confiscated from the Gaelic Irish. In Northern Ireland, you're aware of a dual identity. The green slopes that surround every town remind you that you're on the Emerald Isle. And then you come across brightly coloured symbols of the old British state. Of course, national identity expresses itself a lot through food. I'm going to begin with a staple. At the time of my Bradshaws, a new business in Portadown was making one of Ireland's oldest products. Irwin's Bakery is still going strong. The current co-owner is Brian Irwin. Brian, hello, I'm Michael.
Good morning, Michael. Very welcome to Irwin's Bakery.
Thank you.
We're going into a white coat environment, but we've got a special one for you.
Oh, Brian, you shouldn't have that. It's absolutely perfect. Thank you. Which way? Thank you. Irwin's is one of Northern Ireland's biggest food companies, employing some 400 people. I take it you are a family business.
Totally family business and has been since, 106 years now.
Who was the founder then?
It was our grandfather, William David Irwin, and he came up to Portadown from County Monaghan and apprenticed as a grocer. That went well, to such an extent that he wanted his own grocery shop. After a while, he wanted something extra to sell in the grocery shop. So his sister-in-law, Flossie, and his wife, Ruth, were very good home bakers. So they started to make cakes and small breads to sell in the grocery shop, and then progressed into Irish speciality breads, such as soda bread.
And that bread is eaten all the way through Ireland?
All the way through Ireland. It's something that started in the home. They found that an easy bread to make was brown flour raised with buttermilk and the bicarb of soda.
You could cook this over a fire. You don't need an oven.
You don't need an oven, and that was the remarkable thing about it.
And how many soda loaves are you producing?
About 200,000 units a week.
So this is not just local supply.
About half our production goes to outside of Northern Ireland, mostly to GB.
And it looks like that. What is it about the taste that people like?
They love the natural nutty, wheaty flavour.
Your brother Niall is going to teach me how to make it.
Well, you're very fortunate because he's refused to tell me.
Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what have you put in these bowls?
There is wholemeal flour, there is white flour, and there is baking soda.
Right.
The better you blend it, the better the bread becomes.
Just trying to copy your technique. You kind of lift it out a bit and give it a bit of a twirl. What's it going to taste like? What would you compare it to?
I don't think there is anything that you can compare it to.
All right. I'll accept that, absolutely.
You just get your... No, use your hands.
Really?
Yeah. Keep the term lumpy porridge in your mind.
I think the only issue I'm going to have is ever getting it off my hand. It may have to be baked on the limb, I think.
To lose a hand for a good cause, it would be a small price to pay. Now, as we have mixed this, we have incorporated evil spirits into it.
Is it because I'm here that there are evil spirits, or does it happen routinely?
It tends to happen all the time.
Does it?
We make a cross right the way down to the bottom. Now, if we don't cut it to the base as it bakes, the devil comes out of the product and it causes it to split. That is one that has been properly expelled, and this one is one that wasn't expelled at all. So
Wow.
you can see the ugly split.
I see. The devil has ruined that one,
He ruined it.
and the devil was released from this one and therefore could do no damage.
That's correct. And just pop it in.
Do you mind trying a slice of mine?
Oh yes, I'll make the ultimate sacrifice.
How's that looking?
That's excellent. For a TV presenter, you're not bad.
The devil may have left it, but it's fiendishly good. I'm reading the Bury and Norwich Post of October 1884 about the marriage of Miss Leonie Jerome. She came to England from the United States to visit her sister, Lady Randolph Churchill. She arrived in time to attend numerous balls and was soon one of the belles of the season. Mr. Jack Leslie, heir of Sir John Leslie, Baronet of Glaslock in Ireland, fell in love with the American belle, offered his hand and heart, which were accepted. It sounds like an invasion of American heiresses. Today, the country seat of the Leslie family is Glaslock, over the border in the Republic of Ireland. Glaslock, meaning Green Lake, had a railway station from 1858 until the late 1950s. This is the old Glaslock station. I've been asked to wait in the vicinity for a lift. At the time of my Bradshaws, there were 11 trains a day from here, but now you have to use your imagination. It's been closed a long time. I'm being picked up in true Edwardian style by a present-day member of the Leslie family, Sammy.
You're incredibly welcome to Glaslock. Climb aboard. How are you?
Lovely to see you, Sammy, but what style? Thank you so much for meeting me like this.
Well, the only way to do it.
Sammy, am I in Northern Ireland or the Republic?
Technically still in Ulster, but this is Southern Ireland. And the train line in Glaslock was the first stop just over the border.
The railway station would have meant a lot to your family, to the Leslie family.
Oh, absolutely. One, it was the link to the outside world. And secondly, they wanted sort of the most modern and technologically advanced station they could get. It was one of the first in the country with flushing toilets. I dread to think what they did before.
But I've come to talk to you about a wedding at the end of the 19th century.
Oh, when Leonie Jerome fell in love with Sir John Leslie. What a match that was.
The Leslies have owned the estate since the 17th century, and in 1878 rebuilt the castle in the popular Scottish baronial style.
Thank you very much, kind sir. You're welcome to Castle Leslie. Come on in.
It's absolutely magnificent. Hard-up British aristocrats welcomed wealthy young American heiresses seeking to enter high society. Leonie Jerome, daughter of a wealthy Wall Street speculator, came to Britain in 1870. Now, Leonie apparently was one of a number of sisters.
Well, here you have the three Jerome sisters, and they were known as the pretty, the witty, and the kind. And Leonie on the right was my great-great-grandmother, and she was the kind. She was everybody's favourite auntie.
And the other two, then?
Clara in the middle and Jenny the Great Beauty on the left.
This is Lady Randolph Churchill.
Yes.
20-year-old Jenny wed Lord Randolph Churchill, son of the Duke of Marlborough, bringing an impressive dowry of £50,000. Their son Winston was born that year. Her sister Leonie married Sir John or Jack Leslie. I was reading a paper from 1884 about her marriage. It sounded like a love match with Jack Leslie.
It was very much a love match. I mean, there was that amazing magazine called Fortune's Daughters, where you basically, wealthy Americans advertised their, beautiful, wealthy daughters.
I wanted to ask you delicately, I mean, is this about introducing American money to British families that have fallen upon hard times? Is that what it's about?
Well, absolutely. Those matches were, the Americans made a lot of money, but they didn't feel they had the status. And, let's be honest about it, a lot of the big old houses were struggling. So the matches were quite political.
Well, who knows, we might not have Castle Leslie if you hadn't imported some American money.
Absolutely. The American money kept this place going. We wouldn't be here otherwise.
It's a wonderful drawing room. Do you have other treasures?
We do. The fireplace is by Andrea della Robbia, 1491. We hammered nails in for Christmas stockings when we were children. And over here, we have a hand-me-down because, of course, Jenny and the Marlboroughs were much wealthier than ours, and lots of things were handed down, and this was one of Winston Churchill's baby dresses.
Now, excuse me, it just is too delicious an image to imagine Winston Churchill wearing that. Well, he wore it for what? His christening?
Christening, and it was one of his baby dresses, and it's still the same shape.
Do you have any photographs of Churchill?
We do. There's quite a few around. This is one of him with Leonie, who was his absolute favourite aunt. I think this was taken when they were in Dublin in the Viceroy's Lodge.
This is extraordinary. I mean, Leonie looks a lovely lady. She does look like a kindly aunt. But Churchill, completely recognisable.
Absolutely. You can almost see him in the dress.
He really didn't change much, did he?
No.
Interesting, because I'd often, remembered that Churchill had an American mother, but he also had 2 American aunts, so the American influence was very strong.
And they were a very punchy trio of girls. There's no escaping from it.
So, apart from when he was a little boy, did Churchill maintain a connection with your family later?
Oh, he did. He maintained a close relationship the whole time, and he was very aware during the Irish treaty negotiations at the end of the Civil War. He is rumoured to have asked Michael Collins to ensure that his aunt's house, this house, was kept safe. And we stayed safe. We stayed safe to the current day.
Even though, of course, you're absolutely, as it were, in the eye of the political storm.
Right on the border. The backfields are the border.
At the time of my 1913 guidebook, 2 new thoughts were taking hold. One, that Ireland might govern itself, but also that it might need to be partitioned, south from north. In the 20th century, those 2 ideas cost thousands of lives, Irish and British. That partition is now nearly 100 years old, and with Britain's decision to leave the European Union, the border acquires a new significance. Some things still bind the island of Ireland together. A railway gauge, common to south and north, but different from Great Britain's. Oh, and a love of soda bread. Next time, political tensions escalate.
For the first time in modern Irish history, they invoked the threat of force.
I sample a delicacy from Loch Ney. How often would you eat eel?
3-4 times a week.
Really?
Oh, yes. Usually I eat them for breakfast.
It's a feast. And find out if my swing is up to scratch.
Ooh.
I think you call that a tiny bit heavy.